Hello, everyone. So this is yet another out of the many articles update on the coronavirus problem that we're having all over. And more recently, what has happened is now I'm going to tell you what I've seen, just as a regular civilian in the U.S., is that in the beginning, they were telling people here in the U.S. that it wasn't anything that you needed to worry about or be concerned about, that you virtually were having to be unmoved about this virus, that yes, it is true, yes, it is a virus, yes, it has spread, but it's mainly in the Asian country, in the epicenter of where the outbreak started, of Wuhan, and it is basically being contained. And so we're, as U.S. citizens, led to believe that it isn't coming over here, that only there's a small fraction of people who have contracted it and been quarantined, but relatively the virus is extremely low in the U.S. population. That's what they would have us to believe. But from looking at how quickly this virus has spreaded, and from viewing all of the commotion and all of the stories that are coming out that seem to be more credible coming from the actual country, of how the treatment of people has been there, how some of the places in the area where that outbreak centralized, it's a ghost town, how they have limited resources in their clinics or medical facilities, how people are being rounded up as if they're criminals or suspected of having the virus. It's basically on lockdown and in a martial law state of situation in Wuhan and places that are close to that area where the outbreak first originated. Now there's new information, which really isn't new. It actually was something that was bioengineered in a chemical lab in the Chinese area. I'll get to that. It's a bioweapon. And, being it so that in those countries, there's some places that experience a lot of poverty. So there is also the black market of wild animals that are expensive and cost a lot of money to prepare dishes and to eat. A lot of these animals, this disease has gotten out a number of ways, is from what I'm hearing. Bats was another issue that also came up. And that it seems like all of the theories that just seem to be theories of how this leaked out, all of them have some kind of credible backing. Because, with wild animals, there's a black market in those countries. You spend lots of money to have these dishes prepared. Pangolin was one. Then there were bats, and then there were several other animals that were wild and gamey. And if you go to these countries that have these dishes prepared, they're considered to be delicacies or exotic cuisines. The other thing is that this particular disease, or virus that is, if you look at a Lysol can, you'll see that that virus was on there, on the Lysol can. For many years, people didn't pay much attention to this. It's been around. The thing is that by it being tested in labs, it's bioengineered to be even worse than what it probably originally was. Because when you create these viruses and bioengineer them, you create strains that are more stronger than the first, and they become unstoppable to the point to where you have to wait until it takes its course that may mean a lot of deaths, a lot of people sick and ill, and they have to try to combat that with whatever remedies that they have until it takes its course. And so this is where we're at. So this article here says there are 14 American cruise ship passengers that contracted or were with the coronavirus among those that were evacuated to the U.S. So 2 planes that were carrying 328 Americans evacuated from a coronavirus-stricken cruise liner in Japan that have landed in the U.S., carrying 14 people that are confirmed to have been infected by this virus. So efforts are underway to trace the passengers from a second cruise ship currently docked in Cambodia after an American passenger had tested positive for the actual virus. So here are the latest developments. 14 American evacuated from the Diamond Princess cruise ship in Japan tested positive for coronavirus, but were still allowed to return to the U.S. More than 300 Americans were evacuated on the 2 flights. So a sharp rise in cases in Japan has raised fears that the country is entering a new phase of local transmission. So Japan's health ministry on Monday reported 99 new cases from passengers and crew of the Diamond Princess, increasing the total numbers of infections from the ship to 454. So in China, the number of confirmed cases now exceeds 70,000. If you weren't listening before, you need to listen. It exceeds 70,000. It started as low as 300 and jumped to 70,000, and it hasn't even been a good 3 months yet. And this is with the death toll rising to 1,770 people as of Monday. And so China's ruling Communist Party all but confirmed that it would postpone the 2 sessions, the important annual political meetings scheduled for early March, despite continuing fears of the virus transmission. And Mako's casino will reopen after 2 weeks closure. So Beijing, 14 Americans evacuated from the coronavirus-stricken Diamond Princess cruise ship in Japan tested positive for the illness, but were allowed to board 2 chartered planes bound for quarantine on U.S. military bases. So their return almost doubles the number of confirmed cases now that we hear about, which previously stood to 15 of the new coronaviruses in the U.S. So 14 passengers tested positive for the virus after disembarking the cruise liner, which is moored off the Japanese port of Yokohama. But before boarding the planes, they were all asymptomatic, so health authorities deemed them fit to fly. And so that is a big mistake, because the State Department and the Department of Health and Human Services said in a statement on Monday, this is how it has now gotten out into U.S. population. So these individuals were moved into the most expeditious and safe manner to a specialized containment area on the evacuation aircraft to isolate them in accordance with standard protocols, the department said. A total of 328 Americans were evacuated on the 2 flights. All are due to go into quarantine for 14 days. And so the maximum incubation period for the virus of Travis Air Force Base, Fairfield, California, or Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. Flight data showed that 1 flight had landed in Travis late Sunday night local time, and another in San Antonio early Monday, and another 44 Americans from the cruise ship had previously tested positive for that coronavirus and had been taken to hospitals in Japan to recover. So new cases on the Diamond Princess. And so you see pictures here of what is going on. What we are not experiencing here is what's going on over there. And so we're not only really being misguided, but we're not really knowing all of the details of what's happening with this virus that is a lot more serious than what people would think it is. And so you can kind of see there's a few unrelated pictures, but the pictures where you see people that are in masks and all of these airliners and cruise ships are related to this virus. People disembarking, that's unrelated. People that are having to be, this is a related, anything having to do with the Diamond Princess or any of these places that you see. This the doctor who tried to warn people about this virus and was silenced. He tried to warn people as early as December of 2019, and he was silenced by the Chinese, I will say the government over there. He was silenced not to let this out. And why? Because it is a bioweapon. You don't believe me? I will show you. Okay, so coronavirus, a bioweapon. It's in the news. Coronavirus is a biological weapon. And it is now some news outlets are talking about it. The ones that are trying to really be forthright about what has gone on here, that they always knew that this was going on. So is coronavirus a biological weapon developed by Chinese? Asked Kong leader Manish Tiwari. Okay, well, we'll look at this. Congress leader Manish Tiwari has a question. Is coronavirus a biological weapon developed by the Chinese called the Wuhan 400? So on Sunday, Tiwari shared on Twitter a screenshot of a page from 1981 science fiction named The Eyes of Darkness, where he underlined a part that basically takes you back in time and talks about the decade's most important and dangerous biological weapons, which Chinese used to call the Wuhan 400. So the coronavirus is a biological weapon developed by Chinese called Wuhan 400. Is it or is it not? This book was published in 1981. Do read the excerpts. Okay, so the book author Dean Koontz writes, a Chinese scientist named Lai Chen defected to the United States carrying a diskette record of China's most important and dangerous new biological weapon in a decade. They call the stuff Wuhan 400. And it was the 400th viable strain of a man-made microorganism that created at a research center. It was created there, so insisting that Twitter users to read the above excerpt, Tiwari asked whether the new coronavirus COVID-19, which first broke out in the Chinese province of Wuhan and then spread to more than 25 countries, claiming over 1,600, now at 1,700 lives, is a biological weapon by Chinese that has its reference in the book. And so that basically is a tidbit there. Now I'm going to go back here to another article which says Congress leader shares picture of a fiction novel that asks if coronavirus is the Chinese biological weapon. And so what we've known is that there's a picture here, an excerpt from the 1981 book that was written by an American author that talks elaborately about this. The coronavirus is it a Chinese biological weapon? And that was the question that was posed about this particular virus. And so it's developed by the Chinese government, called the Wuhan 400. Okay, so as a number of deaths are reported due to the infections from the coronavirus that continues to rise, a leader in the Indian National Congress has questioned if, in fact, it is a biological weapon that is developed by the Chinese government, or Chinese government that we know. So that leads us to believe, why is it that they were so persistent on trying to silence this doctor back in December, early on in 2019, when he had tried to share with people the dangers of how quickly this virus spreads and how much seriousness we should put into this. And so it just goes to show you that a lot is not shared with the general population when these type of things come out. And this book could have pretty much put a blueprint on what was to come early on. So he also shared a picture of a cover of a fictional novel written in the 1981 by an American author named Dean Koontz, or Koontz. So I may be wrong about that. I think it's Koontz. The book is called The Eyes of Darkness, and it's a passage from the book. And so it's basically the same thing that I was reading. So it's the passage highlighted in the fictional story coincidentally describes how a virus called the Wuhan 400 was developed in a research facility outside of the city of Wuhan, which ironically is the epicenter of the coronavirus as we know today. The virus is called the perfect weapon in the novel, as it could only affect humans and cannot survive outside of a live human body. Okay, so which reduces the risk of permanent contamination of objects and places. Okay, so this article is being shadowed by something that is not even related to it. So I'm trying to exit out of it. So if you hear any noise in the background, it's because there's something going on. So as of February the 17th, the coronavirus first emerged in central China at the end of last year and has now killed more than 1,800 people, which is the numbers of 1,800 people, and spread around the world now. And the latest figures from China show that there are 70,000 people who have been infected in that country. And that's how fast it has spread. And so I know I've done videos about this, but it's pretty serious, guys. I really believe there's a lot that they haven't shared with people, and like many other tragedies or pandemics, as I believe this is being called, and it surely fits the bill for that. This virus is non-stop. It's jumping from one person to the next person to the next person. And what they've made the mistake of doing is they have this incubation period of 2 weeks, that they feel that once 2 weeks has finally ended, that if people test shows that they don't really have it, that they're asymptomatic, in other words, not showing the virus or any signs of it, there is a probable chance that they don't have it. But what I'm now hearing is that there could be people who are carrying the virus a lot longer than 2 weeks and not showing any symptoms, and asymptomatic, where not because they don't have the virus, it's because they actually carry the virus. And it doesn't mean that it will kill them in the same fashion it does the next person. So it may operate differently on a person who has health issues and a compromised immune system. They may have experience where they die quicker, and versus someone who might have a healthier immune system. They may develop symptoms a lot slower. They may have a reaction a lot slower than those that are already compromised physically with their health. And so this is the problem that we're having. It sounds like they're letting people out, assuming that they don't have the virus, and then later they find that the tests come back positive, that they are infected, that they just don't show the symptoms that another person shows a lot earlier on after being exposed to the virus. So by them letting these people out into the general population in the US, it's now spreading here. And so it's, believe it or not, I'm going to say this, it's affecting the housing market, it's affecting the businesses, it's affecting the quality of life, because people in the back of their mind are waiting and wondering, when is it coming here and when is it coming into our backyard, basically, so to speak. So this is the thing that people are on pins and needles about. He even read where most of the property, which we've complained about multiple times, about a lot of these investors that come from these countries, they buy up a lot of property, and they hire only people that look like them, and they keep money within their own culture. Well, that's changing now, because a lot of this virus has killed a lot of people in those countries, and still killing and still infirming people. And a lot of those investors, if they live in those countries or they're in those areas, they're on lockdown, or they can't get out and do the business that they were doing once before. And so it has affected business here in the U.S. that has done lots of business with people from those countries that have done business here. And so they're not telling people this, that there's going to be a lot that is going to happen in the coming months. And some of this is going to be because of this virus. So they keep a lot of this information out of the general population for the sole purpose of not creating this hysteria and this fear, when people really should be wondering, okay, what's going to happen, and should be concerned a lot more about what's going on. Also know that children carry a lot of germs, and a lot of these schools have kids that come sick. We don't know if they're around people that come from these places, that have traveled to these places, and that these kids have been exposed to it. They come to the school sick, and now they infect the teachers, they infect the other kids. They claim the kids have a higher immune system, a higher probability of living without being stricken by this. But I believe they're just telling us this because they want to put our mind at ease about something that's gotten far out of control, that they really weren't expecting to get this far out of control. And so as of now, what we do know is that this doctor here, who tried to early on warn people about this virus, was silenced. That's what we do know. And he is now dead because he was treating somebody, I'm assuming, that had it. And that's how he got exposure. People who are in the field of medicine, nurses, doctors, are being exposed to this. People who are that are probably in the homeless population will probably be exposed, more than likely be exposed to this somehow, because they are not able to get medical insurance or access to medical facilities for this particular virus. I could see it spreading in populations like that, and also people who have health issues that are pre-existing. And so they're not telling us because they don't want us to worry when we should be worried. And when you hear stories like this and they pass it off as something minor, we're being told in the U.S., oh, it's very low, the probabilities of catching it is very rare, And I believe that is a smokescreen to try to keep people's fears at bay. But once it gets out and it starts claiming the lives of famous people or wealthy people here in the US, then it will hit the media, the news, and then people will start to take it serious. That's how it always is, and that's how it always once was. Where if somebody famous gets sick with it, we all tend to listen. We want to see how to combat this thing because now we know it's real. Nobody believes it. They see it from afar. If it isn't close to their house or somebody they know that they can relate to, or whom they can relate to here in the US, they don't take it serious. And so what I think is it's only a matter of time. It's a waiting game. And that's what the CDC, I've seen some articles that have popped up that have now been taken down off social media because they've been taken down because someone told them take those articles down because it'll start more fears of this virus. I've read them. And I know that those articles were basically trying to outline what was to come. There was one article that was out, and it was from the CDC, and it was taken down. I don't see it anymore, stating that this is a virus. There's no cure for viruses. There's a vaccine in one place, but there's so many people that get sick with this virus. By the time it gets to the general population, most of the people that get treated are the people that have medical insurance. It's about the haves and the have-nots, people that have money, people that are wealthy, people that are able to have access to the vaccines more quicker than those that don't. And so that's how this game is played. It's a waiting game of wait and see what happens. And so that's where we're at on this type of situation, which is very scary. And so there's a lot of other things that are bioweapons that are in these labs that we can't even begin to realize how much dangerous it could be. Somebody could be angry. Somebody could be mad. Somebody could make a lot of money for leaking these type of bioweapons and selling them to people who are really bad people who want to wipe out entire nations of folks. And this is the way to do it, unfortunately. I know this is very scary to hear this, but this doctor was silenced for a reason. And the reason he's silenced and he's now dead because of this very thing he was warning people about is because it was engineered and it was leaked out, and it also was in animals that were diseased in these labs that they were doing experiments on, which these animals could get out into the population. And if you got countries that are poor and that'll eat snakes, that'll eat rats, that'll eat gamey food, that'll eat wild exotic animals for lots of money because it brings money in their population of poverty, then it's very more likely true that a lot of these theories kind of coincide together. So also it mentions something about bats, which that also has something to do with it. I've even heard stories where they have some places where they actually eat bats. It's a delicacy. And so there's lots of countries that you wouldn't believe have wild animals as their delicacy dish. And so if these animals have any of these viruses in them, you're ingesting those viruses in your body, and those viruses can then be transferred out into the human population as well. And so there's many ways that this could have gotten out, but by it being something that has been engineered and it was for the sole purpose of war, is now in the population of people who are not at war, but they're at war with the virus itself and at war with the silencing of truth. And so that's what happens on these social media sites. Now you see, some of these social media sites, when you want to tell the truth about things, when you want to bring out facts, or when you want to bring out real opinions or real fears or real concerns that are valid, that have to do with today's society, somehow your channel will get shut down, or somehow the truth won't be revealed, or somehow they will find a way to find something on you to say that you went against their code of conduct on your social media site, so that you have to abide by certain rules, or we have to take down certain videos. And so it seems to be when it's situations that have to do with death, that have to do with life, that have to do with the quality of life, that have to do with people's livelihood. Those are the most hot button topics, having to do with disease, having to do with people's, personal feelings on how they express themselves in these political states here that focus on mainly, the competition of who's going to get the vote in these countries for whatever topic. We focus on surface issues that are valid, but what about these issues that are hidden, that have always been around, that could affect millions and millions of innocent civilians, such as these bioterroristic weapons that are created in labs and bioengineered, and that if it gets into the wrong hands, it can do damage and decimate communities and states even, and become a global pandemic. And so not enough has been said about this. Some people think, oh, it couldn't happen to us. Usually people are made to feel like they shouldn't fear these things. But all it takes is one or two people to get angry or decide to do the wrong thing. And now you've got a pandemic that is created. And so this is but one of many that exist in these labs. You wonder, well, why do they engineer this stuff? Some say they need it as chemical warfare in case there is a war, that they have something to combat the enemy countries, or enemy soldiers, or enemy whatever. But how risky is that? How safe are we in our society when you know that something like this can spread so quickly? And all it takes is somebody to become greedy, money hungry, or competitive, or not really care for other people. And we have that going on now. So it's easy for these things to get out into the population and attack innocent folks and put them in a state where it pretty much changes the whole arena of society, of what is going on and what we're seeing today. So I'm going to let this video go, but what do you think? Were we being forewarned about this virus through this book that is entitled here, that the author wrote about in 1981? Was he, in fact, trying to give us an inside version on what was to be? Was he kind of leaking out something that could be a reality that is now a reality? The Eyes of Darkness, a passage from the book that talks about the Wuhan 400, was, even though it was a coincidence, it seems, sometimes coincidences in books like this, they may be fictional because we don't see this happening in our time or during that time when the person wrote it. But it may have been a look into the future of what was to come, which is what we're looking at now. We are looking at a virus that is called the coronavirus, and now here in the US it's called COVID-19. It is the coronavirus, and then I'm hearing that one can damage the upper respiratory system, cause problems with breathing, and then it can even get so bad that it can cause kidney failure. Anything that is a virus that can cause kidney failure or upper respiratory problems where you can't breathe is something to be concerned about. If you can catch it from people sneezing and coughing, as simple as that. So having said that, I'm going to let this video go. You can form your own opinions of where you think this may have come from. And it could have come from multiple reasons of why it is now out into the population. And it is here in the US. We don't know who has it. We don't know how many people are going to die here from it. Thanks for listening.